这里说一下。
Well, I have a few things to address first.
我们这边的技术人员还有一些从业人员
All of our technicians and the staff members
以前没有打过接种疫苗的人
are required to receive vaccines for those of you who have not received vaccines. Of course, if you already have some chronic illness, then it is also fine for you not to receive vaccination, though that they claim that it is not mandatory. It is hoped that you will receive vaccination staying here. You have those permits to stay here, and then if you are required to receive vaccination, I think maybe to comply is fine. I've received the first shot myself, and I was not required to receive the second shot. The first time of receiving the shot, it was a really interesting way how the shot was given, but we will see. For the female members who wish to receive vaccination, it will be given on Monday at noon at the clinic beside the residence building. There are a few who have not received the vaccination, and this is an opportunity to do that. Also, there's staff members who received the first shot already but have not received the second or third. It is not necessary for you to all gather together and to go to the clinic and receive vaccination. Well, recently, many people around the world are receiving vaccination. Not so sure if it's beneficial or not. Maybe beneficial. The staff members, technicians are required to receive vaccination, and the male practitioners, it is not said that it's mandatory yet, but if it is so, then you can, I hope that you can comply. I'm not forcing you to do that. It is not forced to do that. If we don't have too many people receiving vaccination, they would keep on calling me. Sometimes the authorities would keep calling me and giving me pressure to do various things, and sometimes we to them as well. So we will see what would be the best. Now, in terms of the pandemic, I think in general, it is somewhat under control, and there are various kinds of situations, and maybe in the future, for example, there would be a price rise in the food and oil and so on. I'm not too sure how and what we should do as a group, because as a group, if we were to accumulate a lot, it is difficult for us to store those kinds of necessities. Some of our departments are storing up some just in case of a lockdown and pandemic and so on. That being said, if we were to store up lots of food, various things could go bad, expired, so it's hard to say what would happen. But I think it is very possible for the price to raise. Many of the agricultural countries, or countries that mainly export agriculture products, are either involved in war or impacted by COVID. Various kinds of changes are happening. So based on your own situation, you can then look into various aspects of preparation. I am not saying that all of us should store up food and all of those, but I think we need to be prepared. I hope that you don't spread the rumor that I ask you to store up some food, but it is necessary to prepare for the future. As monastics, we usually say that we should store up alms during summer so that in the winter people can then engage in retreat. I didn't give you the mantra, did I? The Vajra armor. Did we recite the mantra? Why didn't you recite the mantra? I asked you to do that yesterday, right? Maybe after, maybe later. We also need to chant the Vajra armor mantra. I understand that nowadays we have very limited time, but we have lots of things to recite. There's another thing. Which is different departments, the staff members. Within the Sangha, you have you have the permits to stay here. So you should engage in various kinds of activities. In the past, you didn't necessarily have to present yourself and engage in various activities, but in the future, I think you should. Some of our staff members, I think majority of the staff members are here, and we will see if we can give permits to people who actually provide their service here. This would be more convenient. And for people who are not serving the Sangha, I'm sure you know about the situation. Well, in general, though, in the next few days, I hope that you can still watch your own actions. At the same time, you don't have to be so fearful. How should I put it? You don't have to stay in the kinds of mindset that is so fearful day and night. That is not necessary. We need to know what is going on, and we need to know the limit. I think we need to be clear about that. Tomorrow we will have the class on Shurangama Sutra. We don't have class on Sunday.
To liberate all sentient beings, let us generate the supreme bodhicitta. Now let us begin our class on the Shurangama Sutra. I believe you are being very diligent in the study of the Shurangama Sutra. Especially there are the classes on the after-class tutoring and after-class discussions. These are all very important. Because later, when there are opportunities to propagate the teaching, I believe the Shurangama Sutra will be propagated, will be spread wide and far. I think people really care about it. The great masters of the past, many great masters, including the masters from the Chan Buddhism, Tiantai Buddhism, or Pure Land Buddhism, a great number of Dharma teachers studied Shurangama Sutra. So in our future, I believe we will also have such costs and conditions to propagate the Shurangama Sutra, except the opportunities are a bit different than how the opportunities used to be. In the past, we had the In the past, we had the good tradition of giving teachings in the temples, monasteries, in the Buddhist institutes and centers. There are lots of good traditions that's been passed down in terms of giving Dharma teachings. Though there are some changes in terms of giving the Dharma teaching nowadays, but I think in the future, whenever the causes and conditions are matured, I believe many of us here will be able to still spread the teaching of the correct Dharma, of the perfect Dharma, especially the Shurangama Sutra, which is full of blessings. So when we're studying a sutra like this, we should try our best to develop a deep sense of insights into this teaching. When we're studying this sutra, are you enthusiastic? Are you curious about the teachings? Do you have a sense of genuine devotion to this teaching? If you do have these kinds of hearts to delve into the depth of the teaching, and then whenever it's your turn to propagate the sutra, you won't have any problem. This year, I really hope that I can finish giving the teaching of Shurangama Sutra, but I'm not sure if it will be done. But even if it doesn't, I still vow to finish giving this teaching in my lifetime, and I hope you too will develop a sense of perseverance in the study of the sutra, so that we will have a good, auspicious, dependent arising. Now, in the past classes, we already covered the part where Khenpo Sodargye talked about his experience of impermanence, and then the Buddha gave the teaching of pointing the nature of mind through the example of Ganges River. In Chan Buddhism, there are lots of descriptions about the subtle mind, the genuine mind, or the luminous mind. There are lots of those very special terminologies used. When we're studying sutras such as the Shurangama Sutra, Vimalakirti Sutra, and Lotus Sutra, as well as the Diamond Sutra, these kinds of Mahayana sutras would be easy to teach if you have studied the Vajrayana teachings. But if you had no experience of the Vajrayana teachings, then it would be a little bit difficult to explain, or the teaching would be rather a bit different. Therefore, when it comes to the understanding of these sutras, or the giving teachings on these sutras, if you were to encounter any problem or any difficulties, I think it would be really helpful if you can study some of the Nyingmapa's tantras, such as the illusory net, such as the Dharti teachings. After studying those, and then if you go back to the Mahayana sutras like such, then you will realize that simply the teachings are the same, except that the wordings are different, but the meaning is the same. Why are the wordings different? On one hand, it could be because of the translators back then, around that period of time, they don't really have the same terminology. They don't use the same terminology. In Tibetan Buddhism, there are lots of great translation centers that's funded by the king Tritsum Ditsen. Because of that, the Tibetan translations are quite unified in terms of the similar terminologies. However, later on, with the propagation of Dharma, many individual translators started to translate lots of the sutras. And then the terminologies they used are very different. Just like how in the West, there are lots of Dharma teachers propagating the teachings to the Western audience. And each of the translators would have their own set of terminologies. And there's no standard unified terminologies. Some of them are very much close to their own traditions or their own lineages. Similarly, in the Chinese tradition, there are some sutras that's translated by different translators. They also use different terminology as well. And to standardize those terminologies is quite a bit, there's quite a bit of difficulty. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of the different terminology is because of the time, because lots of the translations have been made available a long time ago. They used ancient Old Chinese, and the expressions are very different than the modern than the language that we use in the modern time. So there's a big gap. When we look at the teachings that's given nowadays, it's very difficult to convert those old Chinese into the netizens' language, so to speak. It's very difficult. But how to preserve those teachings for 100, 200, even 1,000 years? How can we adapt our language into the teaching so that it could make sense to the others? It is something that we have to pay attention to. On one hand, for me, myself, when I prepare the lessons for the Shurangama Sutra, I have to put lots of effort into it. But sometimes I definitely feel that this sutra has such great blessings and it's very meaningful. Therefore, I definitely spend lots of my effort and time into the exploration and the research into the different commentaries. So usually that's what I do. I would combine the different commentaries and then along with my own understanding, and then I would give you the teaching on it. Now let's continue with the actual sutra. Yesterday we stopped at a place where Venerable Ananda requested or made a question, and then the Buddha addressed the fourth aspect of mind, which is the seeing is not lost. The first one is that the nature of seeing is mind. The second one is the nature of seeing is not moving. The nature of seeing does not extinguish. It does not extinct. The nature of seeing is not lost. And that's the fourth one. And yesterday, the example that's given by the Buddha to Ananda was using his hand, demonstrating what is upside down and what is right side up. After addressing this question, everyone was very much dazed, in shock, not sure what to make of it. Maybe they're just quite confused. Or another way of understanding the assembly's reaction was that right away they have already realized the nature of mind, which is very high level of realization. Indeed, upside down or right side up, they're simply our own reference. When we studied Madhyamika, we also talked about there are the two types of convention, the true convention and a false convention. The false convention, they simply do not even exist in the conventional aspect, they're just imputation. And then the true convention manifests in front of the six root consciousness. But these kinds of manifestations are simply manifestations. There is no intrinsic existence in the absolute truth. Therefore, the teaching that's given over here are according to the teachings of the third turning of the wheel. So the Buddha's body or the Ananda's body, in fact, there is no pure and no impurity. The purity and impurity does not have any true existence. So that's the particular teaching that's given here. And then after receiving this teaching, the whole assembly are all in this are all in awe and shock in the very special and very unique state of mind. So let's continue with today's teaching. As a Buddhist, as someone who developed a great faith to the Buddha Dharma and to Buddha, to the Three Jewels, after studying this teaching, I really feel that I am present at the time when the Buddha was giving the teaching. I somehow time traveled all the way back to the 2,500 years ago and witnessing King Pasenati and then Venerable Ananda pose questions. And then later, Manjushri would also ask questions. The other bodhisattvas would also join into this conversation. Through this conversation, we can also try our best to seek for our mind, our true mind. This would make this teaching very unique and very meaningful. So it's crucial for you. While studying this teaching, you should look carefully into your own mind. This is important. Whatever you're studying, for the fortunate disciples who made auspicious connections to that particular sutra or shastra, then some special word and terms and or certain content within that sutra would bring you great realization and insight. If you feel that, oh, I have a heavy karmic debt, then maybe even if I were giving you the most supreme Ati teaching or the Ningti teachings, you probably don't have any feelings and any insights. So I think it really is very much depending on your own understanding, on your own insights. Everyone's very different. There are people who studied over here for 10 years or 20 years, but still they haven't really developed much of the insights, so to speak, but they've already developed a firm sense of faith and renunciation. Even to the study of the same teaching, the same group of people, there are some who's going to develop very deep, very profound realization, and some are probably just dozing over here. And some are probably generating many dualistic thoughts. Then that's just like mixing the poisonous food into the supreme Amrita, just as stated in the preliminary teachings. So all of these kinds of afflictions should not be mixed into the process of listening to Dharma. Whenever we're listening to the Dharma teaching, we have to make sure that our mind stream is pure and not mix the poisonous emotions and afflictions into the pure Dharma teachings, because that is really not necessary. At least we should try our best not to mix those vexes into the Dharma teachings in class. Whenever we're listening to a class, according to the words of my perfect teacher, it stated that either we make the aspiration of benefiting all sentient beings, or we can make the aspiration according to the teaching of skillful means, that is the great purity and great secrecy. We've mentioned this before. The way you should perceive everyone who's listening to the teaching, to the Dharma teacher and the Dharma and the time and the place should be all pure. This is called the inexhaustible ornamental wheel. This is quite inconceivable. We have to tame our mind and adjust our mind to that state, that we're listening to this class along with a great number of bodhisattvas, and we're going to gain great merit through making this aspiration and benefiting sentient beings afterwards. Now let's get into the actual sutra teaching. The Buddha's compassion arose, and he took pity on Ananda and all in the great assembly, and he spoke to the great assembly in a voice that swept over them like an ocean tide. There are lots of depictions of the Shurangama assembly, to the great assembly who presented at the Shurangama teaching over there. There are lots of pictures and lots of paintings and murals depicting this particular scene. Many of the stories and teachings included in the sutras have been depicted in the way through pictures, through art, murals in the monasteries and in various formats. Over here, the Buddha
spoke to the great assembly in a great voice. That's just like ocean tide. The ocean tide is everlasting. The Buddha's voice is just like the ocean tide, which is everlasting and always benefiting sentient beings. That's the other way of explaining why ocean tide. Another explanation is that the ocean is all-pervasive because it's so vast. Therefore, the voice of the Buddha's the compassionate voice of the Buddha can be all-pervasive to his disciples. Except the difference is that some of his disciples has more devotion, and then some of them do not have that much devotion. Therefore, the fruition of receiving the Dharma teachings from the Buddha will be different. So what did the Buddha say at the time of giving the ocean tide-like teachings? He said that all of you good people, I have often said that form and mind and all conditions as well as the Dharma pertains to the mind. All the conditioned dharmas are manifestations of mind only. And then the Buddha continued to say that all of you good people, mainly addressing to Ananda. And then he said that I have often said that form and mind and all conditions, as well as Dharma, pertain to the mind. All the conditioned dharmas are manifestations of mind only. In terms of the few categories stated over here, there are different ways of explanations. For example, according to the commentary of Master Changshui's explanation, I think it's more fitting. Master Changhya Ropidorje, his translation into the Tibetan Tripitaka is a little bit different than the translation of Master Changshui's. Over here, the rupa refers to rupa. And that's the kind of teaching usually given in Abhidharma. Now, when it goes to the mind, it refers to the 8 kinds of consciousness, which is alaya, the namas consciousness, and the mind consciousness, as well as the 5 root consciousness. Then the conditions, all kinds of conditions, over here refers to the 24 types of dissociation. The mind, the mental factor means the 51 types of mental factors. When it comes to the 6 types of unconditioned, it means the space and the cessation through knowledge and cessation without knowledge, etc. On top of that, there are the 5 categories of 100 types of dharmas. These 5 categories of 100 types of dharmas can describe all the dharmas that are included in the conventional world, including, for example, mind, mental factor, as well as the dissociation form, and the animate as well as inanimate, the dissociation, and all of the dharmas that's described in the conventional world, in the conventional sense. I really hope that you can have the opportunity to study it. The text that's recommended over here is Gateway to Knowledge. Whenever you have time, I think studying it is quite important. Now, when we look at the form or the dissociation or unconditioned, all of these dharma, in fact, they are all manifestations of mind. Everything is created by mind. The teaching is well accepted by all sects of Buddhism. I think there's not much of a debate about that. Therefore, I feel Master Changshui's commentary is quite good. In terms of Master Changshui, I think we briefly talked about his life. He made a connection to Shurangama Sutra when he was 9 years of age, and then he spent his whole life practicing this particular sutra. Later in the 6th chapter, when he studied the part in the 6th chapter where it says that let it be movement or instill. In fact, there is no production. When he read till that part, he attained enlightenment. That's the part of the story. He is the 6th patriarch of Huayan school, of the Avatamsaka school. He lived around the time around 900 to about 1000 CE, around the similar time to Venerable Atisha, so about 1000-ish years ago. I feel that his explanation to this particular part is really excellent. He said that every phenomena is created by mind. To continue then, the Buddha then said that your bodies and your mind all appear within the wonder of bright, true, essential, wonderful Dharma. The Buddha then said that your body, your mind, they are simply appearance within the wonders of bright, true, essential, wonderful mind. Everything, your body, your mind, all phenomena, they're sublime, subtle and sublime, bright, luminous, true, without any faults, essential, the core, and the pure Dharma, all derived from this wonderful mind. The wonderful in Tibetan is the real luminous mind. That's the translation. So it says that all the mind, all the body and mind, everything derived from the unconditional luminosity, from this ground. This wonderful mind, within this wonderful mind, this true mind, within this awareness, or the base. This is the particular expression that's used here. In the wish-fulfilling treasury, in the first chapter, this is a very similar view. Means that all appearances, they are no other than appearance of mind. If we were to use Venerable Longchenpa's point of view to explain it, over here then the Buddha said that, why do I say that you have lost track of what is fundamentally wonderful in you, the perfect, wonderful, bright mind, and that in the midst of your bright and enlightened nature, you mistake the false for the real because of ignorance and delusion. Now this particular point of view, it's easier to explain if we were to explain it from the perspective of Vajrayana. So over here it says that all of the body and mind, all of these so-called impure, are derived from the wonderful and from the perfect, bright mind. And why do I say that you have lost track of this fundamentally wonderful mind? This mind that is perfect, is wonderful, is bright. In the Tibetan translation, it is luminous, pure, and true mind. That's the translation. So there's less of the description of the characteristics. But over here it says that this mind that is luminous, is rare, is wonderful, is perfect, is always at peace, it is luminous, it is like a treasure. This kind of pure mind, why do I say that you lost it? And you mistake the false for the real. So how could this real become false? When we studied about the base is luminous. The
the meaning alaya is Tathagata is Buddha nature, and derived from that purity, there is ignorance, and then ignorance as a part of the cause created the three types of habitual tendencies in the three realms, and then we continuously to create karma, and then that's why we spin in the samsara. This is easier to explain. This particular point of view is the view that we share with the common vehicle. Otherwise, people would have the question, if you were to say that there's a nature, then how come this nature all of a sudden got lost? Why is that? Therefore, the Vajrayana teaching is very similar to the Shurangama Sutra. In another word, the teachings of Vajrayana can be verified in the Shurangama Sutra, especially around this part. And then the Buddha continues to say that how it got lost. The Buddha continued to say that mental dimness turns into dull emptiness. This emptiness in the dimness unites with darkness to become form. The mental dimness here refers to ignorance. As you probably all know, out of the great purity, the primordial purity, the co-emergent ignorance and imputational ignorance, at the time when there is no blockage, no obscuration, with that emptiness, particularly this emptiness doesn't mean that it's the great emptiness. Rather, it is the emptiness that is associated to ignorance. So from the primordially pure Dhammadhatu, without any confusion or any obscuration, from there arises the incidental ignorance, which is dull and dim. Out of that, the ignorant aspect, the darkness aspect, combined with form. So ignorance uniting with the conventional emptiness. After uniting together, it becomes a condition which gives rise to form, such as the four great elements. Previously, when we studied about the karmic tendencies of the phenomena, this is equivalent to that. So all the mountains, rivers, and the ground, all of those phenomena. After this, after the form arises, then form mixed with the dualistic thoughts. So the form, after it mixed with the dualistic thoughts is equivalent to the karmic tendency of the consciousness, which is our mind and mental factors. Then the alaya consciousness slowly then give rise to dualistic thoughts, and then further mixed with the form that's on the outside. And then all the dualistic thoughts becomes this kind of dualistic thoughts that grasp onto the form as a body. So stimulated by false thinking, by those dualistic thoughts, the form takes the shape of a body. Therefore, sequentially, it is the form, the thoughts, and the form. According to the Chittamatra school, they would also say that it is of the phenomena and the consciousness and the body, which is the same. It talks about alaya. In terms of the phenomena, some of the Chittamatra school, they would talk about the phenomena as the body. They would call the body as a phenomena. So the three karmic tendencies, including the first one is a form, and second one is thoughts, and the third one is the body. The three types of causes and conditions, once they're matured, the Buddha over here continued to say that as causal conditions come together, there are perpetual internal disturbances which tend to gallop outside. Such inner disturbances are often mistaken for the nature of mind. When the three types of habitual tendencies are all matured, then this is called the internal disturbance, or we would call it the apprehending apprehending dualistic thoughts. And then after we have this apprehending dualistic thoughts, it starts to gallop outside. By grasping onto this is white, this is red. So it would grasp onto the 6 defilements, such as the form, sound, taste, and so on. And then that's how it started to create the dualistic idea of apprehending and apprehended. Such inner disturbances are often mistaken for nature of mind. The sentient beings of the 6 realms would take that as the real mind, holding on to the self that doesn't exist as existent, holding on to the impure as pure, taking on to impermanence as permanently existent. Yesterday we talked about the example of Khenpo Sodargye looking at the river Ganges when he saw the Ganges river at the age of 3 and at the age of 62. He thought they were the same. In fact, he also experienced that confusion, that disturbance, because as a worldly being, he doesn't know about the continuum of the Ganges River. He thought that the river that he used to cross back at the age of 3 is exactly the same as of now. But not knowing that this is the continuum of the river is simply the confused manifestation of this world. But that's understandable because Khenpo Sodargye didn't spend much time in studying and contemplation. Yesterday, during the after-class presentation, I think the 2 presenters didn't present it very well. I'm not sure if it's because I didn't give the example clearly, so I'm just going to state it again. Yesterday, the example was that the eyelash, if the eyelash were to fall into your eyes, then you would be sensitive enough to spot it right away, to feel it right away. But if you were to put one eyelash in your palm, then you have no feeling whatsoever. That example is to demonstrate how a great practitioner would be able to notice impermanence with great sensitivity. Let it be the season changes or the time change, or all those kinds of changes are very obvious to a good practitioner. But for the people without good practice, then they don't really feel very sensitive about it. It doesn't matter how much you try to tell them that, oh, summer and spring changes and it's so impermanent. It doesn't, those kind of people won't be able to understand it. They don't have a very deep insight about that, so they don't really have that kind of sensitivity to it. Therefore, after understanding some of the teachings of Buddhism, though that we're still quite confused in this grasping and in this grasping to self and to the other things, but all of a sudden, if you can recognize it, if you can notice it right away, to notice that, oh, I'm quite confused, or I have already got so trapped in the so-called self and self-grasping and holding on to what's impure as pure, what's unhappy as happy. The nature is not like that. So right away, if you can switch it, then that is the kind of sensitivity a good practitioner should develop. According to the words of my perfect teacher, there are lots of teachings like such. In Tibet, we say, In Tibet, we say that if a person listens to too much Dharma teaching, the head becomes flattened, which means that listened to a lot of Dharma teachings. So how long have you listened to Dharma teachings? 30 years? And you? 20? Okay, that's pretty good. So your head must be very flat right now. Well, I think after so many years of listening to the Dharma, you must have a very tamed mind. It's not easy to listen to the Dharma teachings for that long period of time. Anyhow, after studying and listening and contemplating for a long period of time, there must be some kind of changes of your mind. Even if it doesn't have a tremendous transformation in our lifetime, we have this opportunity to make such an auspicious connection to the Dharma is very rare and very precious. Except that I feel that it is usually a little difficult to merge our mind with the Dharma. It is hard to take the Dharma into your own mind stream. Otherwise, the books are really wonderful. All the Dharma books, one better than the other. They're fantastic, such as Shurangama Sutra, such as the wish-fulfilling treasury. They are genuinely the wish-fulfilling jewels. But sometimes if we want to transform what's on the book into our mind stream, we definitely need to have some persistence and diligence and supplication. We have to have all of that. If we have all of those causes and conditions, then if you can really take into your mind and heart of one teaching, that would be sufficient. You can become a genuine practitioner if you can take one Dharma teaching into your heart. A few years ago, a monk had a conflict with a Tibetan Lama over here over some housing issues. And then because they had quite a severe quarrel, and then the Lama said that, did you not hear any of the Dharma teachings? Maybe because the monk's expression is not very good, and maybe because he was inflicted with different confusion. Of course, we all have those moments that's still infused with lots of our habitual tendencies. But I think it's something that we should contemplate. Have we really practiced the Dharma? Have we really merged into the Dharma? This is quite important. So now let's look at the next part. Says the primary misconception about mind and body is a false view that mind dwells in the physical body. People usually feel that, okay, the mind must be in our body, in this form body. It's because we're so confused. We feel that the five aggregates are ourselves. We take it as an existing self. And for such a reason, we've been lost for such a long period of time because of karmic tendency, because of affliction, because of self-grasping, because of the dualistic thoughts, all of those. And then we feel that, oh, this body is me. But the body is not self. We've studied the ornaments of the precious garland of Madhyamika or the Bodhisattva Charavatara. We know that the five great elements are not me, and the five aggregates are not me, but we have this solid habitual tendency and grasp onto them as a self, but not knowing that this form body is not self at all. The Buddha then says that you do not know that the physical body, as well as the mountains, the river, empty space, and the great earth are all within the wonderful, bright, true mind. This is a very famous, very well
well-known verse from the Shurangama Sutra. So for the sentient beings, the reason we're still spinning in samsara is because of this beginningless karmic tendency, this habitual pattern. According to Vajrayana, according to Sutrayana, this beginningless karmic tendency. But it is not completely beginningless. It starts from the base. Our body or any kinds of form, the rivers, the mountains, Larungar that we see over here, they're indeed quite rare and wonderful. Master Han Shan, a great master I mentioned before, he composed lots of the Chan Buddhism books with his level of insights, which are quite unfathomable. I heard that when he was 30 years of age, he first started to read into Surangama Sutra, but he didn't understand it at all. And then in the historical record, it says that in 8 months, anyhow, it says that he started reading for a long period of time, and he read Shurangama Sutra again and again. Around the age of 41, all of a sudden, the way he understood Shurangama Sutra is suddenly shifted, especially when it comes to the part where it says that your body, your mind, not knowing that the form and body. So this particular part, you do not know that the physical body as well as the mountains, river, empty space, and the great earth are all within the wonderful bright mind. After he read this part, he attained full realization. He composed the book. The title is The Hanging Mirror of Shurangama. Not sure if we can still find it. Well, today we have so many people sitting here. There must be disciples of Master Han Shan. After reading it a few times, have you attained realization? Probably very soon. I read this particular passage a few times today. I haven't attained realization yet. Maybe soon. We'll see. I'll go back and read it again and again tonight. So within the body and mind, all the mountains, rivers, and ground, they're part of the wonderful true mind. According to Vajrayana teaching, it is also taught in such a way. All the manifestations of nirvana and samsara, they are simply the manifestation of awareness. Within the primordial awareness, within the fundamental alaya, it manifests. So these kinds of wording, these kinds of terminologies are very much used in the Vajrayana teachings. Whenever we see these kinds of keywords, especially when you're reading it in the Chinese Buddhism or the great masters, we should, whenever we go through books like that contains wordings like such, then we should pay extra attention and read it again and again, and then make supplication, and then study it again and again. Then it would slowly and slowly bring us great insights. Maybe at the beginning it doesn't really make much sense, but eventually, after you dedicate your time and your effort, and then it will slowly become more clear. Over here it says that all the mountains and rivers
all the mind and the body, everything and everything, they simply are manifestation of the primordial brilliant mind. Just like whenever we're dreaming, there are mountains and rivers. But they're just simply a confused manifestation of mind, of consciousness. And in the Buddhist logic teachings, there are also teachings like such. When you wake up in a dream, then all the mountains and rivers, right away, they just vanish. It's exactly like that. So today, through this kind of teaching, we would be able to recognize the nature of our mind. And then you'll be able to understand all the sentient beings in the three realms, in the samsara, and they feel such grave suffering. But if they can recognize the nature of mind, they would be able to recognize that it's simply their mind. Great numbers of the Chan Buddhist great masters usually would question their disciples through koans or through certain kinds of concise teachings, or the pointing out instructions, or some special way of teaching in the Vajrayana. They would say that, look at the space, look at your mind, or who are you? There are lots of teachings like such. And then the Buddha continued to say it is like ignoring hundreds of thousands of clear, pure seas and taking notice of only a single bubble, seeing it as the entire ocean, as the whole expanse of great and small seas. By seeing this little bubble and thinking that this bubble has all the waves, all the tides of the oceans, and taking this little bubble as all the expanse of the great and small oceans. It is just like to completely abandon the ocean, but grasping onto a bubble as the ocean. Isn't that laughable? But that's how we are. The true mind of ours, that is just like the ocean, which is all-pervasive, and it is the unconditioned. If we were to give up that particular teaching, but hold on to our body, which is just like a tiny bubble, and take this tiny bubble as the ocean, how foolish we are. If we were to hold on to the five aggregates as a self and think that this particular small self is like the ocean, how laughable we are. We're holding onto the five aggregates as a self instead of finding the true self, that is holding onto the bubble as the ocean instead of seeing ocean itself. And then the Buddha said that you people are doubly deluded among the deluded. Such inversion do not differ from the cause by my lowered hand. This is more like a scolding from the Buddha. He continued to say that such inversion does not differ from the cause by my lowered hand. The thus come one says, you are most pitiable. How pitiable you are, all of you confused ones. Over here, thus come one feels great pity for the deluded beings. That's the only that's the example given over here by comparison to ocean and true heart and true mind. So when it comes to the study of Shurangama Sutra, I believe, especially for people who studied who studied Tibetan Buddhism, it would be quite
beneficial, and it's easier for you to understand these teachings. I know some of you have been studying Vajrayana teaching for a long period of time, but whenever we propagate the teaching, I think this is actually quite necessary. I know I'm not the most efficient in understanding this particular sutra, but I have an advantage, which is knowing the Vajrayana, the Tibetan Vajrayana teachings. So by combining these two, this type of commentary, this type of explanation is quite rare. Therefore, I presented my version of teaching for this reason. So we've already finished the fourth pointing out. Now let's continue with the fifth one. The fifth one is seeing does not return. The previous four, not extinct, not moving, not lost, they all give very important teachings. The previous one, not lost, demonstrates that the true mind has never been lost. It is simply a switch, a change of position. That's how the meaning corresponds to the example. There is such a profound teaching attached to the example. But because of our time constraint, we don't have to spend that much time to explain it. And then Ananda, having received the Buddha's compassionate rescue and profound instruction, Ananda's tear fell. And he folded his hands and said to the Buddha, previously, the Buddha scolded them, and maybe his tone was more towards the strict side of things. And then Ananda probably at this time felt that he's definitely a little bit too foolish. Therefore, Ananda folded his hands. So how folding his hands? I'm not quite sure if it's folded hands, but I will refer back to the Tibetan version later. You must know what that means, but you don't want to tell me because you want to see me struggle. That's terrible of you. You're probably thinking that such a simple word, you don't even understand it, but sitting on the throne. Some of you must be thinking that. So over here, Ananda's tear fell and he folded his hands and said to the Buddha, I have heard these wonderful sounds of the Buddha and have realized that the wonderful bright mind is fundamentally perfect. It is the eternally dwelling mind ground. Then Ananda over here said that because of your blessings, because of your wonderful teaching, gives me the opportunity to understand the nature of my mind is bright, is perfect. I have heard the wonderful sounds of Buddha and have realized that the wonderful bright mind is fundamentally perfect. It is eternally dwelling mind ground. But now in the awakening of the Dharma sound that the Buddha is speaking, it is my conditioned mind which I used to contemplate them reverently. Whenever we listen to the Dharma teaching, we sometimes listen to the sound of the teacher, or it feels like we understand. However, the understanding of that sound is still based on the conditioned mind. Many people really enjoy listening to the Dharma teachings, but that mind which listens to the Dharma teachings are still from that conditioned mind. They would say that I really enjoy listening to class, but the mind they use is still the conditioned mind. I believe many of us feel the same way, that we feel we understand what the mind is, but when looking for it, still cannot find it, but still cannot come to the true realization of it. When searching for this mind, they probably haven't really exerted effort into the search of it. They haven't really looked into the profundity of this teaching yet. But only understand this teaching in the words and sentences, but not come to the full realization or come to the full insights of it. So he said that having just obtained the mind, I do not acknowledge that it is the fundamental mind ground. The other day I said, let it be the practice class or whenever we are meditating, do not get distracted by drowsiness or by distraction. We have to recognize the true nature of our mind. We have to use a great sense of determination. If you're determined to recognize it, if you have a great strength, at the time that you're not distracted, not generating all kinds of dualistic thoughts, then you would have the opportunity to recognize it. On one hand, mind is hard to tame, but on the other, once the cause and conditions are matured, then there's a possibility to recognize it. That is why I've emphasized on the importance of practice. For all of you who are sitting here, I'm sure you are all well qualified to give teaching of this. It would be easy for you. But what's really important is that have you recognized the nature of your mind yet? If you even a little bit recognize the nature of your mind, if you have developed a little bit of warmth in terms of your practice, I'm not even saying you have to attain the first bhumi. I'm saying that you at least have a sense of insight and realization of your mind, have a certain kind of insight about cause and fruition or a genuine insight of bodhicitta, then the way you would give teachings to the others are meaningful. Otherwise, you're simply talking the talk but not walking the walk. To transform the mind is crucial. Let it be staying in Laranga for 2 years or 2 months. As long as your mind has a transformation, then when it comes to your turn to propagate the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings or practice on your own, the experience would be completely different. So I hope all of you sitting here do not squander your time on theory. Do not squander your time on
only studying. Of course, studying is good, but what's more important is to recognize your nature of mind. So that can be only generated through practice. Therefore, through the teaching this year, I really hope the Khenpos and Khenpos can go through the words of my perfect teacher, the memorandum of the words of my perfect teacher. I believe when I was translating it, my health wasn't good, so I'm not sure. I don't think I emphasized enough about the oral transmission. I know I received the oral transmission, but I can't remember whom I received the oral transmission from. I've given the Khenpos and Khenpos some oral transmission. So the Khenpos and Khenpos who can give the oral transmissions to the rest of you would be that would be an option. The memorandum of words of my perfect teacher is composed by Khenpo Achung. His lineage is straightforward, passed down from Patrul Rinpoche, which is quite crucial. And the teachings, especially when it comes to the pointing out of the nature of mind, is quite essential. Ananda over here says that I pray that Buddha will take pity on me and proclaim the perfect sound to pull out my doubts by the roots and enable me to return to the unsurpassed way. Ananda, oh poor Ananda, he kept on making mistakes in front of the Buddha, and but I think he has the perfect attitude to study. He's still quite respectful in front of the Buddha, and he then over here requested the Buddha to say that, could you please pass down the perfect teaching and then pull out all of my doubts by root so that I can return to the unsurpassed way. This example is quite simple, so let's continue with it. And then the Buddha over here told Ananda, you still listen to the Dharma with a conditioned mind, and so the Dharma becomes a condition as well. And you do not obtain the Dharma nature. It is like when someone points his finger at moon and shows it to someone else. So this is the example, pointing out that we shouldn't grasp onto words, because that's not the Dharma nature. That's not the true faith. The example being pointing the finger at the moon to show it to someone else.
那么这个时候呢，别人印制应当以看月景。
Guided by the finger, that person should see the moon.
很笨的人的话呢，就是
Any
沿着那个数值呢，就是
people who's not that foolish, they would be able to see the moon. However, if he looks at the finger instead of the if that person who is looking but mistakenly taking the finger as the moon, so this person stopped looking at the moon but looking at the finger and taking it as a moon, then this person loses not only the moon but the finger also. Because by simply looking at the finger, by taking it as the moon, then he doesn't get anything, because the moon is round and it's bright. It's got all the characteristics of the moon. It's of the nature of brightness. So he loses not only the moon but the finger also. Why? He mistakes the pointing finger for the bright moon. Not only he loses the finger, but he also fails to recognize light and darkness. So he can't even distinguish between the difference between light and darkness anymore, because the finger doesn't illuminate, the moon does. The Buddha continued to say that why? He mistakes the substance of the finger for the bright nature of the moon, and so he does not understand the true natures of light and darkness. The same is true of you. And what it means is that the brightness points to the true mind. The darkness then points to the particular point at the pointing finger, which does not illuminate, or the sound of giving the teaching in particular. To give an example, if a Dharma teacher were to give the teaching on Shurangama Sutra, and this Dharma teacher's voice is absolutely magnetizing, and then you get so attracted by the sound but not paying attention to the Dharma teaching, or you get distracted by the atmosphere or by the environment. You feel that the classroom you're staying is really warm and really cozy, and completely forgot that you're here to listen to the Dharma, but not here to get cozy. Similarly, when the person is looking at the moon but paying attention to the finger, then this person had completely lost the point of it. And then the Buddha continues to say that if you take what distinguishes the sound of my speaking Dharma to be your mind, then that mind itself, apart from the sound which is distinguished, should have a nature which makes distinctions. The Buddha over here points out that the mind should part from all kinds of sound that is distinguished, and the mind that distinguishes. However, what you should get is the true mind. So we'll stop here today. Let's continue with tomorrow. Continue with the example tomorrow. Comes back to the hand gesture. Yes, it is folding hands. Thank you. Look, within our senior practitioners, they already read the commentary of Master Xuanhua. That's very good. Though that we don't have Khenpo sitting around here, but we still have very good, talented practitioners.